Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Elon Musk launched his first Falcon Heavy rocket into the sky. Germany is finally getting a new government after some time. And the iHaus team is presenting at the client acceptance test. Of course, I admit that those events do not have necessarily the same significance. We all know that the client acceptance test is much more important. So, what do they have in common? Well, in the background, a lot of people work really hard to make those events happen. And I'm really honored to introduce you to the people who made this event happen. We have our amazing customers, Ralf Flekar and Anton Weber. Thanks a lot for coming today. Jan-Ole Johansen is our incredible project leader, and our fantastic development team consists of Christian, Yannick, Fiona, Nityananda, Paul, Luca, and Florian. And before I talk too long, let me hand over to Paul, who will be guiding you through our presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Felix, and thank you for this great introduction. Let's do some more rocket science. Imagine that we are all living in a smart home, fully equipped with many smart devices. You have a door with a camera. You can turn on your heating from anywhere. You can easily switch the lights from red to blue or anything you want. You can turn on your smart plug. You can turn on your coffee machine using a smart plug. But all of these devices have different apps. And it's difficult to put every device that you want to in one app. There are not many of these apps on the App Store, but there's one, iHaus, our customer. But we want to take it one step further, and let me quickly explain the sequence for now. The idea is that you can sequences, that you can create scenes, to put all devices with a specific action into one click. You have a manual sequence, and you want to trigger that sequence manually by pushing a button. Today we want to introduce iHaus DNA. We found a solution to get rid of the manual trigger, to get rid of the manual sequence creating, and instead replacing it by an automatic sequence creating. Your sequences are created by just using them. You use your house, you use your devices, like always, like you usually do. And we put it one step further. We found a way to automatically trigger those actions. So you have to do nothing if you want to. And to show you how that works, I'd like to invite Dieter up on stage, who's giving you a short overview of our system.
Thank you, Paul. Last time, Yannick and Christian explained how our components work together. Today, I want to focus on one part, the house DNA analysis. Let me show you which components specifically we will look into during the demo. First of all, we have block detection. It searches for consecutive events and splits them into trigger and actions. In the next step, with vector distances, we compare these triggers and only execute the appropriate actions. And last but not least, I want to show how we handle deviations in smart device usage. Let's see block detection action.
Florian is a developer in the iHaus DNA team, and his biggest dream ever is owning a smart home. So he spends most of the time in the last month in our lab. Luca is a friend of Florian, and they both meet not quite often the last time, and they're running in each other at university.
What are you up to? Are you still working on that smart home solution?
Hi, Luca. Yeah, it's so awesome. Come on, I'll give you a tour through the lab.
Great.
When I enter the lab, the door sensor already got triggered. After that, I always turn on the Sonos and both lights so that the system can learn my story.
When you say the system learns your story, do you mean that you don't even have to manually set up a scene?
Exactly. The system detects the scene, or as we call them, story, automatically, and I only have to activate or deactivate it.
That's pretty neat, but does that actually work?
Are you kidding me? What do you think I worked on in the last month? Look, there you go. I just got a notification as we entered the lab. The system detected a new story. The system detected opening and closing the door as trigger and turning on the Sonos and turning on the lights as an action. I'd like that story to be automatically executed the next time, so I activate it and I'll assign a name.
Awesome. You can show me some more features later. Do you want to grab lunch at the Mensa?
Absolutely. I love the food at the Mensa. I bet it's delicious today.
Great, then let's go.
Let me explain what happened. We start with a bunch of events based on the logs smart devices create. Block detection then separates consecutive events from the rest. As you can see, the turning off the heater is too far apart from turning on the lights and is therefore not included. In the next step, it splits them into triggered actions. Trigger are responsible for identifying the correct story, and actions are then executed by our system. Eventually, these triggered actions combined make up one block. We classify the block automatically if it is similar to a story the user has already seen. After all, this is what Luca and Florian will see in just a moment.
So after lunch, Luca and Florian coming back to the lab.
Wait, shouldn't your app automatically execute the story we just detected before lunch?
No, before lunch, we turned on the Sonos and the system detected turning on both lights as an action. But don't worry, I'm sure the machine learning algorithm is currently doing its magic. As you can see, the music just turned on. Let's see what other actions will be executed soon. After lunch, I usually walk back into the lab to drink coffee. So the coffee story, the Sonos turns on first, then the smart plug turns on my coffee machine, and the lights change their colors. The bloom already turned red, and the other light should change their color soon.
Okay, cool, but why did that take so long?
Well, sadly, the communication between every endpoint need a little bit of time. So every smart device generates log entries, and we periodically fetch these log entries to compare it with the triggers of already learned stories. If there is a match and the story is activated, like my story in here, the system executes its action.
Okay, but what part of that takes so long?
Well, the machine learning is actually quite fast, but at the moment it's not possible for us to execute the actions more efficiently, but we're working on that.
You seem to be a bit tired. When did you drink your last coffee?
Well, that must be the long hours from this week, but I can look in the calendar tab, and when I go back one day, I see that the last time the coffee story got executed is at 11:15.
Okay, cool.
Let me quickly recap what Florian just explained. Previously, I said that we compare triggers, and more specifically, we turn these triggers into vectors, and our system constantly compares the events happening right now with its own trigger to existing stories. If it fits one of them, more or less, we execute the appropriate story. Back to the lab.
There seems to be something wrong with the coffee machine. Oh, I just got a notification. The power consumption seems to be a lot less than usual.
Can we actually do something about that?
Let me take a look. The iHaus DNA app has a recommendation for us. We can call the service hotline. Let's try that. Oh, I forgot that this phone has no SIM card installed.
Who is using an iPhone for calling anyways?
Okay, how and when is a recommendation created? We track power consumption and other metrics of every device, and if a device undercuts or exceeds its own average, we send a recommendation to the user to look after said device. Back to Paul.
Thank you, Nitai. So let's talk a little bit about challenges we faced during our project. At first, it was very difficult to create an applicable data model which both fits our needs and let us consume the existing iHaus API. iHaus uses different abstraction levels to communicate with different devices. Understanding them and working with them was a challenge too. Executing stories was a little more challenge than the other ones. We saw in one of our demos that a new story was detected after we triggered some actions. So we have a little cascading story problem sometimes. So where it's dark, there's sometimes auch sun, and we implemented the whole visualization of our app. We managed to detect our stories and to trigger our stories. We implemented our own notification framework, and we built a great RESTful API. Our advice for the future for this project is to take this project a little bit beyond the lab environment and implement multi-user support to carry it over to the real world. So thank you very much for your attention, and we want to invite you to our booth. Maybe we can execute some coffee stories too. And now we are ready for the questions of our great customers, Ralf and Anton.
Thanks a lot for the awesome presentation. I think you did a really good job. Thank you. So you just talked about the future of the project, and what do you think would keep you currently for me running it in my home in a non-lab environment?
The real problem here is that we decided to postpone some tasks and overhead for a real-world environment and the use with different users, and we hard-coded some at some points user IDs and something like that. So we have to rework the app a little bit and the server a little bit, and then it's ready for your home too.
By Thursday next week, right?
Maybe.
Thanks.